I want to talk about what it's been like to switch from a WRX to a Volkswagen GTI. And obviously, if you're here expecting software development content, this is probably not going to be the video. I'm going to be talking about vehicles in this video. I might tie it into software development at the end. We'll see. But I want to talk about what it's like to go from a Subaru to a Volkswagen because it's a pretty hot take to go from a WRX to a GTI. They're very different cars. They're very different experiences, and the power is served differently. And I was really on the fence of what to get as my next car because I had a WRX and then I kind of took a break from that style of car. I had a couple trucks in between, and then I went a year without a vehicle. Um, and now I just got another one and I got a GTI. And I was really on the fence of like, okay, like, am I gonna like a GTI after coming from a WRX? Am I going to be okay with not having all-wheel drive and basically driving a snowmobile in the snow? Because that's literally what it's like. If you've never driven a WRX in the snow, it is an experience. You just got to try it. It's ridiculous. This there could be like 2 feet of snow. It just goes right through. It's just unbelievable. And especially if you put winter tires on there, it's crazy. I remember one time I was driving back on the highway, very snowy, limited visibility. I mean, it could have been a clear day. I didn't spin once. I mean, it was just unbelievable how much traction that car got. I mean, obviously I'm reduced speed, but I was still going like 60. And it was just crazy. It was unbelievable. So that car is just ridiculous in the snow. And obviously rain too. Rain, I mean, it's practically going to be, it may as well have been a sunny day. I mean, it's ridiculous. The WRX is such a fun vehicle. It's so raw feeling. It has super fun, just power delivery. It just kind of comes on and you just take off. And yeah, super fun vehicle. But there's some drawbacks to that car, right? The fit and finish is not the greatest. There's no creature comforts in terms of ride quality because it's a it's a heavy car, but it's got stiff suspension, so you feel everything, right? But I took that thing on 15-hour road trips, and it was super fun to do. But some people that bothers them, right? Some people want the smoother feel. That car has very firm suspension. You feel everything. Very heavy steering, but it's a great time. I think it's impossible to not have a good time when you're driving a WRX, right? I think it's you just guaranteed to have a nice drive. And so I had really positive experiences with the Subaru, and I was afraid that if I went to the GTI, I wouldn't like it as much as the Subaru. And I didn't want to get another WRX because I already had one. I didn't want to just have the same experience. I wanted to have a new experience, but I wanted to have something that was a better experience, right? I wanted to have something that was different, but also better at the same time. And I was worried that obviously, I wasn't gonna have front wheel drive. I wasn't gonna have all wheel drive. I was gonna be moving to front wheel drive. Would I miss the traction that I had? Would I miss the same power delivery? Would I be tired of the torque steer in the front wheel drive GTI? These are all the things that were kind of running around in my head. But the things that ultimately helped me to move from the Subaru to the GTI to make the decision to get the GTI was the hatchback. I just love hatchbacks. Something about the way hatchbacks look are my favorite car styles. Pretty much every hatchback. Oh no, I shouldn't say pretty much every. A lot of hatchbacks in the market. The hot hatch categories. I just love those cars. I think they're so fun. I think they look the best. I just don't really like how sedans look. I just think they all kind of look the same. They all kind of look very plain. I just love hatchbacks. That's what I've always liked. And obviously, that one hatchback, you're going to have the GTI, the Veloster N, the Focus ST, maybe even the Fiesta ST, Mazda Speed 3, all the stereotypical ones, right? So the choice of among those is obviously for me going to be the GTI. And you could argue that I could have looked at a Golf R. I just wasn't. They're a little bit expensive, and I wasn't finding any that had reasonably low miles. I found some that had like There was one popped up that had like 80,000 miles. That would have been like the same price as a GTI, but an 80,000 mile Volkswagen just kind of made me a little bit cautious. So I kind of ruled out a Golf R, even though that would have been, I feel like, a little bit more direct comparison to a more to an STI, but a little bit to a WRX. Um, but ultimately, I ruled that out, and I kind of settled on a GTI as my main vehicle. And this really was about a year's decision because I went a year without a vehicle, and I was just trying to research and figure out, okay, what was the next one going to be. And at that time, I had before this, I had two trucks. I had a Ram and I had a 96 F350 with the 7.3 Power Stroke, and that was just an experience. Needless to say, I did not have that truck very long. I always wanted an OBS style Ford, and I got one, and I did not like it. So I quickly got rid of that before I sunk any money into it. I like the Ram. The Ram 1500 with the Hemi engine is a very good value truck, assuming you don't have the Hemi tick and you don't have broken exhaust manifold studs. If you don't have those, you'll probably be all right. Newer generations, you'll probably be okay. Older ones, you might have some issues, but any like later model Ram, oh, they're pretty good value. They really I think they're one of the better value trucks out there personally, and I had that for about 4.5 years. I didn't have a single problem, and I took it. I did things with it. I pulled I moved a lot of stuff with it. I pulled a tree down, which is actually a video on my channel I have. That was a fun time. But yeah, I never had any issues with it. And then yeah, then I had the Ford, which that was it looked nice, but that was about all that I thought was nice about it. And here we are in a Mark 7 GTI, 2017 with about 25,000 miles. So very low mile GTI, and I think easily say that it's probably one of the most fun vehicles I've ever driven. So if you have any hesitation about whether you should switch from a WRX to a GTI, I wouldn't hesitate to do it, to be honest with you, because it's such a unique driving experience. It's so fun. The steering weight of the GTI is, you can adjust it, but it's very heavy. And you feel very connected to everything in the car. And again, if you like hatchbacks, I think that this is the top of the like rank for everything. Now, obviously, okay, if you're looking at a Focus RS or something like that, maybe that might take it, but GTI I think is a really really solid option. And I remember the first time I pulled on the highway, and that pretty much sealed the deal for me. This car is very fast. It has a lot of power. It's pretty much identical to the Subaru from what my experience was with a stock untuned one. Now, if you tune it and mess with the engine and stuff, yeah, I'm sure you can. Your opinion might be a little different. But this car is a lot more refined, and that's what I heard people say about it. It definitely feels that way. Obviously, the interior quality is miles ahead of the Subaru. The fit and finish of the exterior is much much better. The paint finish is much better. I remember that being a weird thing about the Subaru was the finish of the paint was not good. The clear coat was very poor, and if you got any kind of bug spot on there, it wouldn't you would always see the spot. It was pretty interesting actually. I was kind of surprised at how poor the paint finish was, and now going to a Volkswagen, it's definitely very very different. Now, obviously, if you're not paint finishes and everything right, but that's just one difference. The ride quality is about the same actually. The GTI, you feel everything on the road. You're not going to get comfort driving in the GTI. The power delivery, I'm trying to determine like what obviously on both vehicles you're going to have some kind of lag from the turbo lag, but I don't know. I'm trying to remember back to when I drove the Subaru and now driving the GTI. honestly, they're about the same. The Subaru kind of comes on, like the power just kind of begins, for lack of better words, and like kind of abruptly. The GTI is a little bit the same way, but I think the torque steer makes it a little bit different, meaning you feel it a little bit differently, whereas the Subaru, you are planted the whole time and you're not spinning, right? The GTI, you can spin the wheels, but also you have to kind of fight torque steer. So I think those combinations make you have to treat the power a little bit differently, whereas the Subaru, you can kind of just take it and go with it. And so that part's a little bit different. So I think that, depending on what your driving style is, if you want that raw power delivery and it be planted 100% of the time, you may want to go with the WRX. But if you want like if you want, I mean, just a fun vehicle that's very powerful, the GTI is just a phenomenal choice, and I've really been pleased with it past week. Again, I love the plaid seats. I love hatchbacks. I think hatchbacks make so much sense. And if you find a WRX hatchback that hasn't been, I mean that is actually in reasonable shape and hasn't been tuned and hasn't done all this aftermarket stuff to it, that might be a good option for you. But try to find one of those because it's very difficult and they're usually very expensive. And it's an old vehicle at that point. So it's like, do you want to spend all the money on something that old? I'm like, I don't know. But the WRX hatchbacks look excellent. They look really, really nice. But it's difficult finding them, and it's difficult to find them that haven't been tuned because you do not want to get an engine that's been tuned already because you don't know the full extent of damage or the full, like, you don't know everything else that went along with that tune that was bolted on or done to it. So it's, obviously there's a little bit of risk whatever used car you get, but if you see that stuff done to it, I would just look elsewhere because it's just not worth it. Because if you get a blown engine or you get a blown head gasket on your Subaru, I mean, then you got to get it fixed, which is okay. It's like, whatever, you get it fixed, but it's just a pain, right? If you can avoid that, I probably would avoid it. And I mean, the same thing with the GTI, right? If you see they got an access port hooked up to it and some tune flashed on it, and they put a bolt-on exhaust, I mean, if they put an intake, okay, whatever. But once you start messing with, once people start messing with the engine, then you don't know what people did along with that tune, right? You don't know, like, okay, did they let the engine warm up before they just floored it on the highway? Did they do regular oil changes? I mean, there's just so many unknowns. So if you can get a well documented used car, especially with anything with a turbo, and especially anything with the WRX or GTI or anything of the similar category of hot hatches, you got to, because there's a reason these cars are popular, because you can make power pretty cheap and they're just fun vehicles. So they're very popular amongst the people who have them. And they obviously don't make as many of this type of vehicle. So the used market for these is going to be much smaller than something like a Toyota Camry or something similar, or like a what is the Nissan one, a Versa or something like that. I don't know. It's going to be a little smaller. So finding a used GTI is not, it's not going to probably be something that you'll go like on your first trip and find. You may find it, especially if it's at the right time of year, but if it's a used older one, unless you're willing to spend, a premium, or unless you're willing to take something with high miles, it's tough. I mean, it's the same thing with software engineering, right? To tie that back into this, whenever you're dealing with code that's been around for a while, you don't know all the assumptions and all the bugs that you may uncover. And it's the same exact thing in cars. That's why I always talk about how software development should be treated like car maintenance, because it's very similar. Estimating tasks is like estimating work to be done on a vehicle. You give somebody a quote and you come under or over that quote, and you put hours into it and you uncover additional problems. Let's say you're doing if you're under the hood and you figure out, hey, we got a bad brake line. Well, once you fix that, oh, wait a second, we have to change one of the rotors. Okay, you change that, and then, oh, actually, we got one of these pads. So it just kind of like, is this, a series of things that, you uncover. And you can't really estimate for that. And software development is identical. You cannot estimate everything fully. You will always uncover more bugs or things to change or legacy code you have to get out of there or new code you have to add in to accommodate, who knows what. It's the exact same. So when you're looking for vehicles, just make sure you do your due diligence a little bit as best you can. Again, it's fun. We want these cars. They're just a great time. You have a great time driving them. Stuff breaks. Obviously, you get it fixed. But if we can help it, try to find a decent one. And GTIs, man. But it's a ton of fun. And I'm driving in the snow. You just have to go slower. Um, but you can navigate it. You'll be fine. I feel like I drove a WRX for almost 5 years. I know exactly how it feels. I know exactly how it performs in very snowy conditions. It does very well. But when you hit ice, you can't get around ice. So you always have to be cautious of ice. It's going to be no different than the GTI. If you put a good set of tires on there, you go slow, you'll be able to navigate in the snow. But if you hit ice, you got to know how to react. And so ice is going to be kind of you just got to make sure that if you are driving on ice, you either A, are not driving, you're staying home, or you take it slow, right? And that's the biggest thing. You don't want to. I wouldn't make snow the deciding factor of what vehicle you get, depending on how you drive, right? I would really do it by the impression you get from the car. Because some cars you may sit in, and something about it you can't describe, you just might not like it. And that's how some vehicles are. And other cars you sit in and you just like it. And that's for me how the GTI is. It's a car that I sat in and I knew that I just liked it. And it's a great time to drive. Um, and it was the same for the Subaru for me. And it was just, yeah, it's I feel like some people switch from the GTI to a WRX when they move into a snowy climate. I did the opposite, but I had the Subaru in a snowy climate and I had the GTI in a snowy climate. I wouldn't put much stock into that personally after having both of them. Would I go back to a Subaru? Sure. Yeah, I would go back to a Subaru. Would I get another GTI after this one? Absolutely. Yeah, I would get both. I don't think you can make a wrong decision of any of those cars. I think they're phenomenal platforms. You can do a lot with them, and there's they both got good communities around them. They're just really a great time. So that's enough of my vehicle rant. If you want to see any more vehicle content or anything, let me know. Anyway, that's all I got for today, and I'll see you in the next one.